Well, if having children is a part of your future plan, know that you have to be ready to spend a lot of money. Parents are probably shaking their heads at home right now. The cost of raising a child are up, and up until they're 18, it has now topped $300,000 in many parts of the country too. Our finance expert John Vandergriff from Blue Ridge Wealth Planners is here to explain everything. The first thing though, John, is why is it so expensive to raise a child?
Well, like we were talking, it's really more expensive to do just about anything now. And the good news is you don't need all 300,000 of those dollars at once. So it is spread over 18 years. So as we look at that, I mean, whether it's housing costs, food costs, daycare, all of that combined together is what we're looking at for that really large expense over time.
And they need everything from you. They don't pay rent.
Right.
They don't make their own paycheck. So what are the top 3 expenses for parents too?
Well, so housing costs get lumped into this as well. So obviously, providing shelter and all the costs that they share there. Food is also a part of that. And then daycare is a pretty, maybe not a surprising part, but a pretty large portion of that. When you think about, especially if you're having to work, some instances you feel like you're almost working for daycare cost, as like a 1-to-1 type ratio. So again, when we look at that, that's there. And then, this doesn't even include the college tuition costs that come after 18, for most people. This is just the lead up until that. So.
Right. And I know we were chatting about this a little earlier, but you have one of each. You have a boy and a girl. Which are typically more expensive, or are they all just very expensive?
Well, I mean, I would tend to think girls probably lean toward more expense, but it really depends on what activities they do. If you get involved in travel baseball and some of these other things, it can obviously ramp up the expense. So I think, unfortunately, I don't know that you can wish one or the other from a financial perspective, because depending on what their interests are, they can add up pretty quickly.
That is so true. Every kid is different. But even though, maybe you're already a parent or you're planning for parenthood, what are some steps people can take now to ensure that they're not digging themselves into a financial hole?
Well, one of the things that we look at when you look at kind of what your expenses are is trying to go through like a 50-30-20, where you say 50% of what I bring in goes toward essential expenses, 30% goes toward more discretionary spending, and then 20% can go toward savings or paying off debt. And so as we look at child expenses, the easy thing that can happen is if you're not paying attention to those expenses, you can get into a position where you maybe take an extra vacation, you're not aware of what those expenses, and then the debt number starts to really eat in, not just today, but into some of the long-term planning that you're wanting to do. And so being very diligent about what's coming in is a good step to take, but also not neglecting the future, because too many times we have to find that right balance between what do we enjoy today versus what do we need to do for the future, and the future expenses for your kids being college tuition, but also making sure you're not neglecting your retirement as a part of that.
And that leads right into what are some risks people run if they don't plan ahead, if they're just sort of flying by the seat of their pants thinking, it'll be fine.
Well, again, one of the statistics that always amazes me is, how many people don't participate in 401k plans. And so, especially when you're getting a free match, that is just an easy way for money to start and compound over time for you to be able to have conversations of retiring at some point. And so, if you're looking for options to do in supplement of that, I would say that's probably the first step. Looking at 529 plans, especially with the rules that have changed where some of that money can now be put into a Roth for the child's name, is a very good step. And then also investigating Trump accounts. Those have some good benefits. Even if your child wasn't born 25 or later, there are still some grants and things that they may be eligible for depending on their zip code that can get free money in there as well. So just trying to look at all the options that are available to not just help your child be in a position, but also make sure you're not neglecting your own situation too.
All right. And then if they are listening to this and they're eating it up and they want some more advice, how can they find you all?
Yeah, Blue Ridge Wealth Planners, go to blueridgewealth.com. We have classes that we do. We have a YouTube channel, really just all kinds of resources out there to try to get people involved in the planning process as early as possible, but especially when you're transitioning to retirement, trying to make sure you kind of have your ducks in a row and goals tied to what decisions you need to make.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about how expensive kids are and how to prepare.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's good to be aware.
It is for sure. All right, we want